afternoon and welcome to this Astranti financial training video. As you can see on the screen in front of you, this is your real world industry analysis video. This is going to accompany your industry pack that comes with all your Astranti materials to prepare you in the best possible way for your SCS exam. And of course, you can see that the case study is looking at Zoom, which is a ride-sharing industry. So we're just going to scroll through this document, and the aim of this video is to pick out the most important parts that are going to get you the most points in your actual exam. But why do you actually have to bother with an industry pack? What's the point of it? Well, let's just go to the opening of this exam. And remember, the case study is kind of like a role play. And in the case study, you are a senior finance manager in the finance function of Zoom. You report directly to the board and you advise on special projects and strategic matters. Now, the reason why you have to know about the real world industry is that the examiners expect you to have an excellent knowledge of the pre-seen industry and demonstrate this in the exam. Now, the case study is all about testing how you can apply your knowledge in the real world. It's not about testing your theoretical knowledge. That will be done at F3 and E3 and P3. And so what we're doing in this guide is to make sure that you hit that expectation of the examiners and get the best marks that you possibly can. Now, to get the best marks, you're expected to provide logical business advice, as though you were actually working in the industry. So you've got to know this industry inside out. You've got to know the trends that are happening. You've got to know the real world issues that are facing real world companies, so you can apply them in your own way to Zoom in the exam. And just to highlight again how important it is, when students of Astranti have sat the real world exams, we've asked them for feedback. And a number of people have commented that they felt that the exam was extremely practical and they wished they'd spent more time focusing on the case study and the industry and less on revising theoretical knowledge, because they thought that would have helped them provide the practical answers that the examiners are saying that they want from the SCS exam. So, we've been through the web, we've been over journals, magazines to highlight the most relevant and up-to-date information so that you are able to apply it to your exam and, as I've already said, get the best possible marks that you can. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, we're moving on now to an introduction to the industry. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit for you now. Let's just go up a bit here. So, as I'm sure you're aware, most of you will have probably taken an Uber or ridden an Uber, or at least know what an Uber is. But it's only been out 10 years. It's one of those techs that have really taken society by surprise, and now everyone's really familiar without it, but it's only been a decade old. And in that time, Uber have used around or taken riders on about 10 billion trips. The total ride-sharing industry is now valued at approximately $61.3 billion, but that figure is expected to grow by 2025 to about $218 billion. So obviously this is an industry that Zoom looks pretty promising that they're part of. Now, Uber and Zoom are both TNCs, and that means they're transport network companies. Now, the importance of this is that both Uber and Zoom think of themselves as technology companies. Now, this is important when we come to staffing issues later on. But quite quickly, let's just go through actually what TNCs do. Because TNCs can also be called ride sharing, can also be called ride hailing. Now, these terms can be used pretty interchangeably. There are slight differences which we'll come to in a second, but ride hailing services are available in most large cities now in most countries around the world. Uber in about 58 countries at the moment. But as I'm sure you're aware, because Uber are often in the news, there's been lots of controversies about this new tech because it's really impacted on existing transport companies. And again, this is an issue we're going to explore later on in the pack. Now, obviously, I'm sure, as I've already said, that you've all used a ride-hailing service. They're all available on apps or through web access. And basically, you get a credit card, you open up an account. Then you say, well, I'm here. Transport network companies have vehicles nearby, and they say, okay, we'll collect you in, can be anything like 2 minutes. I mean, if you're in a populated area like central London, there's always TNCs around. This, of course, means that you don't have to stand on a street corner waiting and waving for a taxi as you did traditionally. They would come to your destination and they would drop you off where you want to go. And this would all be pre-agreed before you get in the car. And then the prepayment would all be done on debit cards, so you wouldn't have to actually pay your driver any cash at all. And until recently, there wasn't a tipping option either, so there'll be no cash exchanged. So there we go. I've gone over the glossary terms. I'm not going to highlight them. So let's move down now to the competitors and other services offered by car sharing firms. Now, of course, we all know Uber. They are the main ride-sharing company. They're the biggest ride-sharing company. It says here Uber's available in 633 cities around the world. And in fact, people say now we're getting an Uber instead of maybe getting a ride-sharing company. That's how related to the language of ride-sharing that they are. But they are not the only ride-sharing company available. Another company we're going to see often in this industry pact is Lyft. Now, Lyft are only available in North America, in the United States, and Canada. Now, in those areas, they've in fact got 30% of the market share. And the reason we see a lot of them through this industry pact is there are a lot of similarities between Lyft and Zoom, and Uber and Optim, which is Zoom's competitors in the pre-scene. But what we've done here is there's loads of ride-sharing companies around the world. So what I've done is just highlighted one particular city, which is London. Now, Uber launched in London in about 2014. But since then, loads of competitors have also entered or are intending to enter the London market. And this is something I think is really worth bearing in mind for your pre-scene, because at the moment, of course, it's just Zoom and Optim in J-Land. But that's certainly not going to be the case if we use London as an example. So I'm going to go through these quite quickly. All these different companies, so the first one, I don't know how you pronounce it, Zooks, all have different USPs. So, for example, Viavan bills itself as a more affordable and environmentally friendly alternative to Uber, and operates primarily in London's central fare zones 1 and 2. My Taxi is taking the traditional taxi companies and hooking them up to an app. Get is an Israeli company. They offer completely flat pricing, whereas, of course, Uber and Lyft and Zoom and Optim offer surge pricing. Again, that's something we're going to come to later on. But you see they've got a USP. We've got Ola down at the bottom here. Now, they're a ride-hailing company from India. They totally dominated their local market, and they're looking to spread into Australia and are going to launch in the UK, not just London, throughout the UK. Then we've got BlaBlaCar. That's slightly different. It's a carpooling startup. So users look to carpool with people who are making a journey maybe from London to Cardiff. So again, it's slightly different. They've all got USPs, but there's quite a few competitors, I think you'll agree. Wheelie are aiming at the luxury end of the market. which actually is how Uber started out at the beginning. So they offer executive journeys. We've got Addison Lee, who have been operating in London for a number of years. They are a traditional minicab company, but of course they're now offering ride sharing as well through an app. Because really, when you think about it, Addison Lee existed already with a minicab company, so all they had to do was to create an app, and they too could offer that ride-sharing service. They already had the vehicles on the streets. Now, of course, they're different because they actually employ their drivers, whereas Uber, Lyft, Zoom, and Optim don't. And again, that's a key issue we're going to come back to time and time again in this pre-scene. And then just to finish off, we've got Cabby. They're a London minicab aggregator, and we've got Didi Chuxing. Again, apologies for my pronunciation. They're a massive Chinese company. Now, Uber also operated in China, but in fact, Didi struck back, and in fact, Uber gave up the fight. And in fact, sold part of their business to Didi, so they now have a stake in each other. But of course, they're now moving, they're expanding to different locations throughout the world. So there we go. Quite an extensive list of competitors. And now at the end of each section, we're going to go into more detail about how what we've just looked at is relevant and important to the pre-scene. But before we get to the end of this section, I also want to look at the other services that are offered by TNCs, because often they're not just offering ride sharing. Now, the first one I want to look at is food delivery. And the main contender here is Uber Eats. Now, from Uber Eats, using an app, the users can read the menu of restaurants, pay for the food through the apps, and then Uber Eats bring the food from the restaurant to the user's location. Now, just to show you what a huge industry this is, in 2018, Uber Eats grossed $7.9 billion. Now, that is a figure that is expected to grow as well. So, that's one service offered by a company. Another is freight, and again, we're looking at Uber here. Now, Uber Freight matches truck drivers with retailers, warehouses, and other shippers. Very similar to the traditional ride-sharing app, but in a different industry. Now, a competitor in this market, which was set up by two former Amazon employees, was recently valued at $1 billion. So once again, there's certainly an opportunity for growth in these markets. Another service that's offered by ride-sharing companies is bikes. Now, Lyft and Uber both offer electric scooter and bike services. Now, basically, these are a way for ride-sharing companies to get that what's called the last mile. So if there's huge congestion, users of the ride-sharing companies can get out of vehicles, can order the vehicles to stop near one of the bike hubs and ride or scooter their way for the last mile to beat congestion through cities. Now, this also gives ride-sharing companies the opportunity to say, well, look, we're really quite green. We're really trying to hammer down congestion in our cities. Now, we can show the urgency that ride-sharing companies are giving by the fact that Lyft acquired Motivate, which was the biggest bike-sharing company in the US, to grow its market share. But in fact, actually, and we'll come to this later on as well, the scooters are really seeing the biggest growth in this sector at the moment. Another opportunity is for ride-sharing companies is through flight. Now, Uber Air is working with various aeronautical companies to offer taxi flights. Now, again, similar to freight, this is very similar to the traditional ride-hailing business, but instead of using cars, as you can guess, it's using planes. Now, a reason for this is that it means that customers are going to be able to travel from city to city really easily, but it also means that hopefully congestion can be brought down in cities. And again, it's really important for these companies to be offering multiple services, because if consumers or customers want, say, a bike service or a flight service and the one app doesn't offer it, they can download another app. They can use that service, and they may use that car service as well. So it's really important that a ride-sharing app doesn't get left behind. And the last service that can be offered or is offered is healthcare. Now, this is predominantly in the American market because it's not such an important factor in the UK market, for example, where there's a National Health Service. But Medicaid, who are the state and federal offer of low-income insurance in America, spend $1.5 billion a year on transporting patients from their homes to medical facilities. Now, it's believed that by using ride-sharing companies, they can save $500 million. So you can see this could be a really lucrative market for ride-sharing companies to move into. And actually, Lyft have recently signed a contract to transport Medicaid patients in Arizona. So, there we go. We've got more services that are offered by ride-sharing companies. But what does it all mean? What's the purpose of this? Well, at the end of every section, we have an application to the pre-scene. And here is the important bit. This is really what we want you to take from this document and from this video, because you have to take this information, because remember, you're working in a role-playing scenario. What would you do? What decisions would you make based on the real world? And we can see a lot of similarities, as I've already said, between Zoom and Optim and Lyft and Uber. And so we can use a lot of the ideas and the problems and the issues faced by these real-world companies and actually use them for Zoom. So we've already said that Zoom has a large part of the J-Land market share. But as we've seen in London with the glut of competitors, they're all offering unique USPs, all offering slightly different services that they should brace themselves for competition. Now, one of the ways they could brace themselves for that competition is to start expanding their portfolio of services. Now, there's no reason why Zoom can't offer the same services as Lyft and Uber. We know at the moment they operate a bike sharing service as well. But what's to stop them offering a food delivery service, just as we saw with Urban Eats? Because we know that J-Land is a highly urban population. And we'll come to some data later on that shows that ride-sharing companies are more successful in urban populations and the reasons for that. And so it stands to reason there's going to be lots of restaurants, people eat out more in the cities, and so Uber Eats, equivalent Zoom Eats, should do equally as well as Uber has done. And remember, it was worth a huge amount of money. Another opportunity for them could be a freight service, and of course, possibly a patient transportation service. Now, we don't know any information about the healthcare situation in J-Land, but it's certainly something to bear thinking about, and certainly other opportunities like that. We are aware, after all, that J-Land are really welcoming and trying to help ride-sharing companies. So perhaps there are other opportunities for a ride-sharing company to connect with state services, as Lyft have done in the US. Now, of course, another possibility could be using planes as taxis later on. That's certainly an avenue that should be analysed by Zoom, because, of course, it could help reduce congestion. Now, J-Land, as we can see in the pre-scene, has a real problem with congestion. Its infrastructure is really having problems. So, one opportunity, we know that J-Land's government are trying to help with ride-sharing tech and all that kind of stuff. So, it's not really too great a leap to think actually they might welcome Zoom pushing forward with a flight service as well. So there we go. That's the information we've learned in the first section and how we could apply it to Zoom in the pre-scene. And just before you go, I'd really like to share with you some exciting products that we here at Strategy provide you that we feel would be really beneficial to make sure that you achieve the highest marks that you can. And the first of these, as you can see on the screen, is the study text. And this will really highlight all the theories that you are going to need for your exams. And we also accompany this study text with course videos. We also provide the pre-scene analysis, which again highlights all the key bits of relevant information that you're going to need to comment on in your case study exam, as well as an industry analysis, which provides real-world information about industries that are relevant to those in the pre-scene. This is something that we've found a lot of students don't really use, and it's reflected in their final marks. We also provide mock exams, and each of these mock exams is created for every level of the case study. And as another service, we provide marking and feedback to these mock exams to make sure that you know you're on the right course before you actually take your exam. And then we also provide masterclasses, which provides you with hints and tips to make sure that you can achieve the best that you can achieve in the exams. And also, we provide the full course offer of a pass guarantee. Now, that's provided, of course, that certain criteria are met, but if you're determined to pass your case study exam, that's the option for you. Thank you very much.